I think this was the first science experiment that I ever saw. I remember my prep teacher, Mrs. Donald, blowing up a balloon and then pushing a series of needles into the balloon without it popping. I think it blew 6-year-old Ben's little mind. I remember coming back in from recess and I found Mrs. Donald's balloon flat. And when I showed her very disheartened, she told me, well, when you take the needles out, sometimes the balloon will leak or even go on to completely pop. And I remember telling her with only the confidence that a 6-year-old can possess that it's not a very impressive experiment if your balloon isn't a balloon anymore when you're finished with it. And she told me, well, Ben, one day you might be big enough and ugly enough to work a solution out for yourself. Now I think wherever Mrs. Donald is now, she'd be pretty rapt to know that 20 years later, I'm still working on a solution to her little balloon experiment. Well, kind of. When a baby grows inside mum, it grows inside its own balloon. We call them the fetal membranes. And sometimes when that baby's going to die during pregnancy, we actually have to do surgery on it before birth to save it. Now those procedures are called fetal surgeries. Now fetal surgeries are performed kind of like Mrs. Donald's balloon experiment. We perform them via keyhole surgery, using a camera and instruments on the end of long needles called cannula. Now during surgery, we actually have to inflate the fetal membranes like a balloon to give us space, and we then push the cannula through the fetal membranes into the space where the baby is to perform surgery. Now interestingly, the fetal membranes actually have the same problems as Mrs. Donald's balloon. We can take the cannula out okay after surgery, but the membranes will often go on to leak or even completely rupture in the days or weeks to follow. And when the membranes rupture, the baby will often be born too early, and that's when things can get really nasty. So my PhD is really looking for a pregnancy equivalent solution to Mrs. Donald's balloon experiment. How can we keep those membranes intact after we take the cannula out? I think a logical solution would be to look at the holes left by the cannula, but they actually close up okay after surgery. So we actually think it's the way that we inflate the balloon or the fetal membranes in the first place. So during my thesis, we've recreated fetal surgery in a preclinical model, and we're pulling apart every piece about how we perform that inflation procedure. We're looking for the best gas that we should be using, the optimal pressure to inflate the balloon to, and the ideal duration that surgery should go for, all with the aim of keeping those membranes intact after we take the cannula out at surgery. Because this isn't just about satisfying the curiosities of 6-year-old Ben. If I can get this right, we can reduce the number of babies that are born too early after fetal surgery. And I think that's something that Mrs. Donald would be proud of.